Hey everybody, well welcome back to 68 Under Exhumed. I am Kari the Mortician.
I'm Faith, that mortuary professor. We are covering season 3, episode 7. It is called Time and Space. And so we're more than halfway through the series
I
now, which is
know.
interesting.
Yeah.
Um, but we open with Brenda and her mother and brother in a hotel room, in a hospital room. And Brenda's dad is in the hospital bed, and they're all just kind of sitting around. They don't really talk or anything. And then, come to find out her dad passes away. So it's Brenda's
Bernard.
dad.
Yeah.
Yep. It's Brenda's dad that dies in this particular episode. I don't know if we were supposed to believe that, like, he died at that moment or just at some point, because I'll be honest with you, he did not look very sick or
No.
very close to death or very, I mean, we have seen many people come from home hospice or hospital or this or that, and he's just in like a regular shirt, looks totally normal, just has a little thing of oxygen. And that's not how it looks. So that was kind of, I noticed that.
Yeah, they didn't make him up to look as sickly as maybe he would have in that moment.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like he died right then. I feel like
Okay.
he was failing and maybe something was going to like we hear a lot of times where people are, we were in the hospital, we were turning a corner, we were thought we were going to get
Yep.
ready to go home, and then they all of a sudden have like a
Yep.
cardiac episode and then just boom, die. And so to me that's how I pictured that it was gonna, like, he was cruising along and then just boom. That's how I
Yeah,
imagined.
that's why I said I don't know if we're supposed to believe that that's like he died right then and there.
Yeah.
It was like later
And I
because.
didn't remember that her dad had died, from watching it
Oh.
before and stuff. I didn't remember um that this was happening that way. So, yeah, so he dies. Then of course, we jump over to all the storylines, which is, as we're finding, those are becoming more dominant than almost the death, except this one, it is definitely a bigger part because it's Brenda's dad. So we jump into Lisa's getting ready. She's going to go to a cooking show. She's kind of leaving for a day, which is a big deal because
I
she
want to go to a food show. How do we get to a food show?
Ooh,
I
how
like
fun would that
food
would
and I like I
be?
like food and I like shows. It can't be. I mean, I'm sure that you have to taste all the food, right? Or how would
Right.
you know?
So I
Oh,
I think it's good she's leaving and she's going to
yeah.
do something, getting out of the house. But she's like, "Are you sure you're okay with the baby?" Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. And he's like, "Yep, I'm great." But then he finds out um that Brenda's dad has died. And I don't even remember how he
In
finds.
the
Oh,
newspaper.
he sees it in the paper. And he's like,
Remember
"Oh my
that?
gosh, the funeral's today." So
Yeah.
he asks Rico if his wife can watch the baby and goes over there. This is when we really see that Vanessa's not okay.
Yeah. I don't remember that we knew that Vanessa's mom died, did we?
I don't
I
either
don't think
because I
so.
kept thinking, like,
Why wouldn't she
why,
go to?
why wasn't that part
Yeah.
of a
Yeah,
storyline?
it should have been.
Because she's buried right there in town. So why is
Yeah.
it not part of the storyline that she dies, and why do they not take care of her? I feel like that would have been an amazing episode to get to,
Yeah.
like Rico taking care of his
Yeah,
loved
yeah.
one. It's like we skipped over this whole thing that could have been great. But yeah, we find out that her mom has just died about a month or so before. And Nate walks in and is like, oh my God, the house is
No,
complete.
it's been 4 months.
Oh, has it at
Yeah,
that point?
yeah. She says four.
It's in the house is in shambles. The kids are like all over the place. She's completely scattered. You can tell her poop is not in a pile. And so Nate's
Yeah,
like, I'm not leaving my kid here.
yeah,
And he tries to talk to Rico about it, and Rico is just like, well, what are you talking about? Because he hasn't seen it. And I get
yeah.
that. Sometimes when you're so close to what's happening, you don't see how bad it is until you
Mhm.
step back and are like, oh, shoot, there's a problem. And so that was kind of
Mhm.
an eye opener to him that maybe I should look at this,
Yeah, yeah.
which is
No, I
sad.
agree. It was sad, but uh, having two, what is she's got two kids under like 3, you can't get your stuff together. And no, I don't
Enough on
think.
its own.
That, yeah, I mean that's gosh, beyond like, her mom dying or whatever. I would the way the house was and the way she was, that's exactly how I would expect someone to be that had two toddlers that was alone with them most of the time. So I don't know. But yeah, Nate goes back and tells Rico that he didn't feel comfortable leaving the baby there, and Rico kind of takes offense to that, and
Yeah.
that is what it is. And then Arthur offers to watch the baby, and I probably would have let him, but what's he gonna do? I mean, they're
Well,
all
and
there
Ruth is
now.
there. Like, there's people in the house. It's not
Yeah.
why didn't he ask Ruth? That seems like the
She was
most.
gone, remember? She went to Ruth, so earlier in the episode, Ruth is listening to some like music that Arthur made on a computer,
Yes.
and he says that he's going to go for a run, and then she leaves to go buy a gardening hat, but ends up, so she was
Stalking
out
him.
stalking
Yes.
Arthur at that time, and Arthur had just come back, and Ruth was not back yet.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I remember part of it, but not the whole. Yeah. Ruth, God bless this whole Arthur Ruth thing.
It's
It's
so uncomfortable.
so ick, but it's like it on the verge of sweet, but then you're like, oh, but it's too ick. It's
It's
just
too
like
ick.
it's like a just of age boy.
Yeah.
It's like Mrs. Robinson, like in a weird
And he
way.
has,
It's
it's at this point, it's not, I feel like he has no idea it's not
happening.
like it's returned or
I
or
think he's feeling something, but I feel like it's
encouraged.
a more maternal
Yeah.
thing, but I don't know. And Ruth is this weird, giddy, like schoolgirl. It's
Yeah.
all weird, like ew. Like in coming up episodes, as things kind of like are happening, I was so verbal out loud as I'm
Oh
watching,
yeah.
going, "Oh Jesus, what is happening right?"
Yeah,
Like what?
it's very
Cringe,
uncomfortable.
very
Yes.
cringe.
Yes.
Um, and then we've got Russell, and all I wrote was Russell, greasy hair up.
He's
Like
so gross.
his whole
I know.
greasy hair look is, and I'm like, was this
No, it
popular
was not.
then?
No,
Was this
it was
like a grunge
not.
thing? I don't know.
No, this is post grunge. This
Ah,
is 2003. This is post grunge, and even grunge it didn't
I
mean you
want him to
didn't
just take a
wash.
shower. I
I
just feel like
know.
he's yuck.
He is yuck. He looks
Yuck.
like he smells, and he probably does. And yeah, not attractive at all.
No, I
No.
don't know what they were going for with all of that, but um they go to, so Nate ends up taking the baby
Mhm.
to the funeral because he
Yes.
thinks it's important to go. And it is important, I think, to go to things if it's not, doesn't create an uncomfortable situation
Yeah.
with you when is your ex. But he knew the
Well,
whole
and for him,
family.
it never, what I like about it, at least from Nate's perspective, is it's never about it's inappropriate to take a baby to a funeral
Mm-mm,
because it's not.
no,
It's about, but I will say, as a parent, you don't want your child to be disruptive. So I
right.
think, for him, he was like, I don't want, like, was trying to find someone to watch her because he worried she would be disruptive, which a less than year old baby is bound to be. But it wasn't that the message wasn't that children don't belong at funerals.
No. Oh, and I didn't even think about that. I
Yeah.
just think it was more, it's easier if
Yeah,
it's just me rather
totally.
than me having to travel with a baby and
Mhm.
figure all this out. Uh,
My daughter had to leave her own grandfather's funeral because they don't know, and they're not, it's like taking a baby anywhere. They don't know. Take them to a wedding and they're going to be disruptive or whatever. So, she had to be removed during the middle of the funeral
yeah.
because she just wouldn't stop shouting, and but it was never, but I did appreciate that in the show, that it was never framed as it's inappropriate for the baby to go. It was more, probably, at least from what I read into it, that it would be very difficult for a parent to have to
Yeah.
manage a baby at some kind of thing where, there's a certain level of seriousness.
Well, and it
Yeah.
was funny. You and I are texting the other day and we're like, hey, yeah, we're watching the episodes. And you're like, a funeral at a beach, like, are you kidding me? Just like getting married at a beach and getting married, like, what
It
if there's
sounds like a good
sunbathers? What
idea.
if there's this? What if there's that? What if there's
Well,
bad
and
weather?
they didn't
Blowing
even have like a
sand?
microphone.
No.
Like you can't hear anything. Here's the ocean, and y'all are in rows, and somebody's 20 feet up there you can't hear anything. And they didn't
No.
even like go as far as like try to have a, speaker or whatever, which looks terrible, but at least it's something. So no, I mean, I'm just thinking the whole time these people are up there speaking. The people in the first row, there's no way they could hear them. There's no way.
It's just loud.
And then
It's
you're gonna like
windy.
and then
It's,
they're all dressed like if you're gonna have a beach funeral, put in your whatever to dress beachy.
yeah.
Don't people don't go to the beach in formal clothing and heels and these what I can only assume are very expensive wool jackets. And like it was just totally bizarre to me.
Well, and it looked like it's at somebody's estate or something.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's nice and there's walkways and there's everything. So maybe that does fancy it up and
Yeah.
there's like waiters and waitresses. And so they did it like very bougie on the beach kind of thing, but definitely different. And, Brenda and everybody's happy that Nate has come and Brenda and Nate are chatting and kind of catch up. And she asked him to see his scar,
Yeah.
which I was like, huh. Okay. Like it was just a weird place to maybe say it, but so she asked him that, and then that's kind of it. Like it's
Yeah.
really low key. He goes and just pays the respects and then he goes home. And of course it's a big deal with Lisa because did she touch my baby? Was she near my baby? Blah 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 blah. Which I get the insecurities, jealousies of an ex, especially when they were a significant ex and you don't really know why it ended. There's no real
Yeah.
resolve there. And you've taken your baby to go visit this ex at a funeral, like you care about her still. So what does that mean and everything? And I think Lisa's just super insecure anyway. So definitely creates a situation with it. What should he have done? Call her and been like, "Hey, I'm going to go do this," and then ruined her day or not. So I don't know
I don't think it occurred to him that it would be a problem to take the baby if he needed to.
yeah,
Because he did call and tell her that he wanted to go. And she was like, "Oh, so your mom will watch, the baby?" He's like, "Yeah, I'll figure something out." I don't think that he realized that it would be an issue if he wasn't able to find someone to watch her and just took her along. I don't think that ever
yeah.
occurred to him, you know?
Well, I think some of the things are not. Lisa's hyperreactive in some
Yeah,
ways, but then also, yeah, like I would possibly be that same kind of person depending on the situation. And I think as women, we all have insecure moments sometimes, and depending who your partner and what their last relationship and
sure, yeah.
all of theirs. And like they discuss in the future, they weren't like in love when they got married. They got married, she was pregnant, and it's a different kind of start to a relationship. So
Mhm.
it's just a different scenario, maybe. And she is very
Sure.
insecure, but
I guess, my logical brain says, well, if you're worried about it, what's he going to do with the baby there?
right,
Like,
like,
what's going to happen? You know what I mean? I mean, I would be more like worried about if I were Lisa and I were worried about like what was going to happen. I'd be more worried if he was by himself. At
yeah,
least the baby being there is like a buffer. Like, what are they
right,
going to do? Go sneak off to the what? I mean, maybe. I
yeah,
mean, people are crazy, but at the same time, like it's like a layer of her presence kind of being there, oh, there's Nate with his baby, with his, that he has with a wife,
right.
like makes you think of the people there, think of that rather than just by himself. But I don't know.
We go back to David and Keith are still at
Yep.
this kind of party thing, and Keith is like, I want to leave. I don't want to be here. I feel like this little storyline is drawn out.
About at the party?
Yeah, just all of it. Like this guy
Yeah.
that, they did it in Sears once or whatever they did. And then all of a sudden they're hanging out with him and his boyfriend
Well,
and Dave and Keith. And so it's
yeah.
this because it arcs across the next couple
But
episodes.
how much time has passed? I mean, is this all happening within a weekend? Or is this like, I don't know, you know? So like
Yeah.
if they just had the choir concert Thursday night and this is Saturday morning and they're playing paintball Sunday, I don't know. That's normal timing, I guess. But if we're
To me,
supposed to
it's like
need
it's
a break,
weeks, but yeah, maybe it's not as big of a deal as, or it's as long of a period of time. So I
that's
guess
a problem with
that
this
does
show
make sense.
that I'm noticing watching it back is we don't get a good idea of how much time has elapsed between things. Some
Yeah.
episodes seem to like pick up immediately, and others there's been time that's passed, but we don't know if it's like a few days or months
Yeah.
or like
Like how long's Arthur been there? Has it been a
we
week?
don't know.
Has it been a
Is it day
month?
4? Like we
Is it?
don't know.
Yeah. So
Enough
that is
to have a load of laundry done.
a couple of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because she's
But
like smelling his handkerchiefs or whatever. Like,
it's so gross. Handkerchiefs are so gross. My oh God. My aunts still use them and they're so why would they're
well, and
gross.
he writes a letter back home because
Yeah.
it's, I mean, this is era of still writing letters. And he's
Oh,
telling,
he's dictating in a
oh, and a voice thing.
yeah.
Yes, because you hear him saying it and he says, and there is this lovely woman that is here who, and kind of mentions Ruth. And that's when you realize like she is becoming an important person. You just
But
don't know in kind of what way.
yeah. It could very much be in a motherly way or not, because Arthur is like the most asexual kind of like you have no idea if
So
he even
dry. He's so
what it
dry.
is. I mean, he jumped up when the porn thing flipped on, so I guess but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's no real, we don't know anything about Arthur other than he's a student living there and has like Mormon cousins at this point. We don't, and makes music on we don't know much about his like history or his
No,
life.
we don't. It's kind of
But
vague.
yeah, he's dictating into this like recorder. And then he says at the end of it, it would be really convenient if you'd get an email address, because I guess he's like mailing these tapes or something like, I don't know.
So
But
weird.
cheaper to mail I mean, write it. It's cheaper to mail a letter than a tape.
Yeah,
I don't know. Very
weird.
strange. But
So I think well, Enrico goes to try and talk to Vanessa about
yeah.
her depression, and she's like, I'm fine. My mom died. I'm just upset. It's fine. Like she just really blows it off. And he kind of finally is like looking around and seeing, well, crap, the house is literally a disaster. She's a mess. She's not taking care of herself or the kids. And he's realizing where the extremity of kind of where it's at. But yet, how do you broach that? And I do love that about the
Yeah.
next few episodes that they talk about it and seeing how hard it must be for someone who loves someone else to talk to them about what they consider a problem that could turn into self-harm, could turn into, just whatever. And so we see that that's a challenge. Like, how do you do that delicately? How do you do that well?
Well, how do you do that even? Is it even appropriate at that point? Because, she says in that scene at their house, it's been 4 months.
Yeah,
And I don't know. To me, that's not a long time. And so it just kind of becomes like, how long is too long to
right,
still be in that much grief? But also, if like the mom died and life just went on and she wasn't given any time at the beginning, she's not going to
right,
come through that. You know what I mean? If the mom died and she like had all this support and time and all this for like the first 2 or 3 months, and then they transition back into normal life or whatever, but if mom died on Saturday, Rico's back at work at Monday, you know what I mean?
right.
And she never got any kind of like acute support or anything. Well, yeah, 4 months later, she's not going to be in a different place.
Yeah,
So we really don't know, and there's no timeline for grief. So to me, 4 months is not a concerning amount of time, depending on, the relationship that they had and all these things. Um, but it is concerning maybe that, if the kids aren't being cared for properly or whatever, that's not okay for sure. But I
right.
don't think the problem is that she's grieving. I think maybe the problem is that she didn't get any support and hasn't.
Yeah. Yeah. Your grief never really ends. Like there's
Yeah.
always a part that is missing that person that never fully. you don't return to a normal
Yeah,
and things. But if you're not functioning, if you're not taking care of yourself, your children, I think past a shorter point,
sure.
like at 4 months, you should be taking care of yourself. You should be bathing, you should
Yeah,
be eating, you should be functioning in some way. You can still be sad and it can still
yeah,
be hard. It's expected to be, but if you're not functioning and doing some of what you need to do, and especially if your kids are being neglected and stuff, that's a problem.
sure.
And it's okay to say, I need help, or it doesn't mean that you have to get over it or you have
Yeah,
to be okay. It means you can still be in pain and still sad because your person was important and special. But if you're not coping and
yeah.
functioning, then getting some support is not a bad thing.
Yeah, but do
At
we need to
all.
jump to she needs to go get on antidepressants or does she need help and support? And it kind of feels,
Yeah.
and again, Rico, it's probably cultural and all kinds of things, but Rico's like, you need to go to the doctor and get some anti medicine or something. And it's like, I mean, like, I don't know, does she need antidepressants because her mom died or does she need support and you know,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff first. So that was kind of like, yeah, I mean, he's trying to help, but I do have to just wonder, just in looking at that situation, is the problem that she's not coping, or is the problem that she doesn't have the support to be able to cope?
But how okay was it 20 years ago to go to a therapist? Now
Yeah.
every other ad on every podcast is BetterHelp. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's trendy and cool to have a therapist and to have somebody. But back then, maybe it wasn't as much to go talk to
Yeah.
somebody. Maybe that meant you were a bit
Yeah.
crazy. And so, as opposed to that, it's okay to get some medicine to
Maybe.
be
Yeah.
better. And so, but then I also think he works in death care
Yeah.
and his view on loss is skewed because I think we
Yes.
are skewed
Hmm.
from how we go through things and how we
Yes.
approach. And
Yep.
so to know what is okay with someone else who's not in death care, even though she's around death at the nursing home and stuff, I think it's also hard for us to gauge what is normal or appropriate or okay,
It is.
you know?
It's true. Yeah.
Now, the last part of this episode was beautiful. And I loved this moment. And it's Brenda and Billy and Mom sitting at the end of the day after the funeral. And Bernie's urn is sitting there on the table. And it's just this quiet moment. And you have to imagine every family who has a funeral gets to the end of the day, the end of all this event, and all of a sudden, there's this quiet after all the phone calls, all the emails, all the flowers, all the food, all the everything, and then it's silent.
Yep.
And then you're left to go into the next part of your life. And
Mhm.
they're just sitting in this quiet moment, talking about dad dying and just talking about life and about everything. And I'm imagining every family that goes through loss getting
Mhm.
to that quiet moment and that being such a well, oh shit, what now kind of
Yeah.
thing, and that just to me was such a real moment to be able to put in the show because it's something that is just so raw and real that people encounter at the end of these events where all of a you have all this support and you have all this action and motion and then all of a sudden
Yep. Then
it
everybody leaves.
and then you're in
Yeah.
silent and you're just sitting there with their urn going, now what?
Yeah.
Now what? And I loved that they had that in there. I just think it was perfect
Oh,
that
it was.
they
And
did
I
that.
did like that one of them that she was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with that thing. And so then one of them was like, well, you don't have to decide. He's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Which is kind of right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the way that like Brenda and Billy were sitting was almost childlike and the way that they were, and it just kind of shows that when stuff kind of serious happens, you do kind of revert to, your younger self or whatever, especially you know, in situations like that, like anytime families get together, and I think we see this in arrangements a lot too, right? Like you can come in with five adult children and they're all 10, 11, 9, and 8 years old again
Yeah.
in that arrangement room.
Well, and
So,
I think that's the hard part of the surviving spouse,
yep.
too, is you're not just grieving your life partner, you're grieving your kid's parent.
Yeah.
And so you can't just take care of yourself. Like you're worried about your kids and your grandkids and all these layers of other people in loss that you are kind of in charge of in some way because they have lost this person, even though you have lost half your life, essentially.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, when people say, what's the hardest funerals and stuff, and it's not kids, it is, for me, it is these people who have been together 70 years or 80 years or whatever, and then they're standing there alone for the first time in their adult life ever.
Yeah.
And, the kids lost a parent, yes, but this person has lost who they talk to every day, the person they drink coffee with in the morning, their person who they've slept next to for 70, like
Yeah.
that to me is just the most heartbreaking
Yeah.
thing. And it's not, I'm not, you can't compare it to a parent losing a child. They're just different losses. But to me, those are some of the most emotional moments I think I've had working funerals is those because you see this person who is I just can't even imagine,
Yeah.
at 90 something, you can't reestablish what your life is, I feel like, in a lot of
Mhm.
ways, because you're so far into life that's why people do die so closely within a year or so of each other, because they were one life in a lot of ways
Mhm.
towards the end. Like, it's just, oh, I could just,
For
so,
some reason, for me, it was always sadder when the wife died
yes.
because I feel like, the way, and I just noticed this, I just noticed this so frequently. If it was the husband that died, everybody was like, gathered around the mom. Oh, mom, do you need this? Oh, mom, oh, mom. Everybody that would come would hug her and da 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 da. And if she cried, it was fine. But when it's like a man that's the survivor, like the kids, they don't know how to act. Like they don't know how to interact with their father who's grieving. People that come to funerals, like they don't know, they're not going to hug. Maybe they'll shake his hand, but they don't get that same like emotional support that I feel like, at least from what I've witnessed, a woman does at a funeral. And so it's kind of sad, because you can actually see, I don't know if you've noticed this, but you can actually see the difference in the kind of support a widow gets versus a widower, and it's really sad.
And I gravitate towards old men. Like in terms of
Okay.
like in terms of extra talking, extra like
Mhm.
seeking them out, and maybe that's why. But
Yeah,
I've always I don't know, honed in on that a little more because I don't know. There's just something about it. And maybe because it's not as common. Like when you really look at more men die before the women. And
yeah,
so when there is a widow, then, or widower, then, right?
yeah,
Why am I questioning that? It's just, it's a little more rare, but I don't know because, and especially that generation, the men are supposed to be stoic. They're supposed to be
yeah,
caretakers. They're supposed to be. And what I love, 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 and I see this with the men, is you have like a man who is feeble. He's maybe a little in a wheelchair or doesn't walk as well or doesn't whatever. And they're like, oh, dad's going to just do this. I said, your dad's going to stand and he's going to walk and he's going to do all of that because
yeah,
this is who he does it for. And
yeah,
of any day in his whole life, this is the day he's going to show up for your mom more than any other day because he's going to pay her honor. And they do.
yeah,
When they will stand and they will walk and they will be in more motion than they have ever been in and they will push themselves as hard as they can because that is the generation and that is
yeah,
what you do and you show up for your person, and it's such a it's romantic in a lot of ways, and it's sad because of that.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
yeah. So I love that part of this episode, and that's kind of where it all closes out for the most part is oh no no no. Brenda's dad comes and talks to Nate.
Yep.
And we've started seeing that again. We went several episodes without anybody kind of visiting or talking or coming back, and we just had that with a gentleman that died in the car accident and was from the 70s, and um Josh Radnor when he played that part, and he came and talked to him at the end of the episode at the
Yep.
funeral and stuff. And so now we have Brenda's dad coming and talking to him, and he's talking about finding happiness and says, she'll be fine and she'll find happiness just like you. And then he's like, but have you? And so they have this little moment where it kind of puts some question into Nate, I think,
Oh, yeah.
about where he's at and what is happiness and who is the right person to be with and kind of stuff. And so we'll see what happens after that.
Yep. Well, that's it. That's how it ends.
Done. Yeah. So that's Bernard Chenoweth, episode 7. So move into, is Brenda back? Is she not back? Guess we'll see next week. So, what did you guys think of this? Share your stories about like post funeral and old men at funerals. Sad. And what you guys have encountered. And we will see you back next week for episode 8.
Bye.
Bye, guys.